Man, I sure do love playing on this DS, but sure gets boring sometimes. If there was only like a DS that was just like the DS, but like more. What the hell is that? Well, that's just a regular DS. Oh God! The Nintendo 3DS, that's the topic of today's video. The Nintendo DS was released back in 2011 with the Wii U. It was Nintendo's handheld at the time, and I mean, it was alright. It's aged decently well, and it's got some decent games on it. The whole point of the 3DS was a stereoscopic 3D capability, because Nintendo just couldn't stop trying to fuck with 3D on their consoles. It was something that they'd been known to do. I mean, anything from the Virtual Boy to the fact that they originally planned for Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube to have stereoscopic 3D like on the 3DS. Nintendo's always had an interesting relationship with 3D capabilities. However, they decided to go full on again, like with the Virtual Boy, but only slightly better with the 3DS. Nintendo 3DS had its entire thing being that it was not only a sequel to the DS, but it skipped the entire sequel part of the 2 entirely by just going straight to 3 for 3D capabilities. Almost all the games in Nintendo 3DS are compatible with the 3D in some regard, and, you know, they were all pretty decent. So let's go over some of the games that are on the Nintendo 3DS, because there was a lot of good ones and a lot of stinkers on there as well. I mean, you had games all the way up from your 10 out of 10s to your, you know, they're not amazing, but you like them anyways, to Paper Mario Sticker Star. So let's start with probably one of the more well-known 3DS games, Tomodachi Life, which I made a video on last week. Tomodachi Life was a game about Miis and having them on an island, and it was always a pretty cool game. I mean, I like it. I made a whole video about it. Tomodachi Life itself is pretty fun. I like it. You know, and it's a really interesting, wacky concept. It actually is a sequel to a different game called Tomodachi Collection, which was only ever released in Japan and never to the Western world. And this game just works so well with the 3DS. The 2 screens work perfectly well with it. The game itself is fun to play on the 3DS, the stylus works really well for interacting with the Miis and the island, and as a game, I think it's just a really good concept for something like the 3DS. And then you had this. What the fuck were they thinking? Paper Mario Sticker Star was an entry into the Paper Mario series for the 3DS, and it really didn't go well. The entire gimmick of the game was the stickers that you could be able to use in battles to fight enemies and to progress through the game. However, the stickers were always limited in their capabilities, and it was just really not fun to play. It was incredibly grindy, and just, why would you want to play this version of the game? Or you could play something like the Thousand Year Door, where the combat is objectively better. I mean, the game, it just isn't very good. I mean, I played it, I remember when I first got it, and I opened it up, and I was like, oh boy, finally I get to play Sticker Star! Oh my god! Oh my god! This is AIDS! Though while Sticker Star is a really bad game, it is really more of a minority. Most 3DS games are pretty good. Like Mario Kart 7. As a Mario Kart fanboy myself, I always have a bit of a soft spot for Mario Karts in general. And Mario Kart 7, I think, is decently good. As the base game, I think it's alright. I mean, the game's pretty good. It takes off after Mario Kart Wii and is a sort of proto-version of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. There's not a whole lot of reason to return to this specific entry nowadays, because Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart Wii kind of give off better vibes and generally are better games. However, I still think it's a decent Mario Kart. However, where Mario Kart 7 really shines is in its modding scene. Mario Kart 7 has this really cool mod, CTGP7, which is like CTGP Revolution, which is for Mario Kart Wii, but it's for Mario Kart 7. It actually adds quite a lot of content, allows you to play as many different new characters, and adds so many new tracks and stuff. It's a really, really good mod pack. And to anyone who actually really likes Mario Kart 7, I'd really suggest trying it out. And then you've got games like New Super Mario Bros. 2, which was the obligatory 2D Mario game of the platform. The New Soup series was at this point, this was pretty much the turning point for where people were like, okay, this is enough now, and well, they didn't stop. And New Soup 2 is probably one of the best examples of Nintendo corporatism. It is so streamlined and polished, but in a really corporate, tacky, and almost astroturfed way that it's it just feels kind of fake. But because it was like the first game I played on the 3DS, I have a soft spot for it personally. It's an alright game, I mean it functions perfectly fine. And it had some little challenge packs you could buy from the eShop on the 3DS, which was actually a pretty cool thing. When the 3DS originally launched, it was actually at a really steep price. It was actually almost like what people were complaining about with the Switch 2 today. A lot of people really didn't like the price of the 3DS, and they didn't buy it because of it. And because people weren't buying it, Nintendo basically went, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, no one's buying the 3DS! What do we do?" What do you mean lower the prices? But we're Nintendo, we never lower the prices! Fine, we'll lower the damn prices. And so they lowered the prices of the console, and it actually worked out incredibly well. It became a really well-selling console. The 3DS is actually a very successful handheld console to this day. It ended up selling over 70 million units, which is actually insane when you go back to think about the 3DS, because not a lot of people actually think about this console specifically. When people mention the 3DS, they usually mean to go to the just normal DS. And the 3DS actually did pretty well. Nintendo managed to save the 3DS by lowering its price. However, a lot of people were obviously going to be pissed because they bought the 3DS at the original price. However, in order to satiate these people who bought the 3DS at its original price, Nintendo decided it would be a good idea to give them a little extra bonus for being, in their eyes, ambassadors, as they called them. And so the ambassador program was started. If you bought the 3DS at its original price, Nintendo gave you 10 free NES and Game Boy Advance games each. And you could play those on your 3DS. They got them for free. Now, the NES games would be later released on the eShop and Virtual Console games. However, the Game Boy Advance games were never released, which was really weird, especially considering Nintendo said that Game Boy Advance games wouldn't work on the 3DS and that it was not able to emulate them, even though the 3DS can, fun fact, natively play GBA games. Yeah, the 3DS, because it essentially has a DS built into it and it has genuine DS hardware built into it, and because the DS hardware has Game Boy Advance hardware built into it, the 3DS can actually natively run GBA games without the need of emulation. However, Nintendo didn't think that that was going to be important, and they never actually sold GBA games on the 3DS, sadly, so that was never something that anyone was able to see. Now, eventually, a lot of people were actually starting to use the 3D feature on the 3DS, and a lot of kids got the 3DS as well, and when they started using the 3D feature, well, oh boy, I, a 7-year-old child, just got this brand new Nintendo console. I wonder what turning on the 3D will do. Wow, I'm blind. Many people got worried about the health and safety concerns of 3D effects on a young child's eyes. And so Nintendo, in order to also satiate these people, decided to make and release the Nintendo 2DS. The 2DS itself was a alright console, and the whole point of it is that it was a 3DS, but, well, without the 3D. The original 2DS, though, I mean, this thing is incredibly weird to look at. It's essentially a slab. It looks like a piece of toast, to be honest. But, honestly, it's incredibly comfortable to hold and play with. Honestly, out of all the 3DS models, it's probably the most comfortable to play games with. The slab actually makes it really fun to hold. It's almost like a sort of GBA type vibe that you get from it. Nintendo also got many complaints from people who were basically claiming to be giants, who told Nintendo that the little 3DS wasn't going to be able to fit in their hands because their hands were way too large for something like a 3DS. And so Nintendo decided to release the Nintendo 3DS XL, which was, surprisingly, an XL, or larger version of the 3DS. 3DS XL was a decent upgrade to the original 3DS. It had larger screens, a larger, better stylus, and a better stylus placement as well, as on the original 3DS, the stylus was placed on the back, whether on this one, it was a nice, easy to slide out place on the side. The entire console was made larger, so it was better for people with smaller hands, and the start, select, and home buttons were all redesigned and are just so much better on the 3DS XL compared to the original 3DS. Nintendo, however, wouldn't stop with just the 3DS and 3DS XL and the 2DS, as they would eventually decide, hey, wait, I had this really cool idea. What if we, did the 3DS again, but, newer? And this was the birth of hell. The new Nintendo 3DS line, this included the new Nintendo 3DS, the new Nintendo 3DS XL, and the eventually new Nintendo 2DS XL, which is very Nintendo. The new 3DS is my main primary 3DS personally, and it's a decent upgrade. The entire console was a little bit larger than the original 3DS. The corners were nice and rounded, so it felt a lot better to hold in your hands. The A, X, Y, and B buttons were colored like the SNES controller, which was a really nice little callback. It had a little nub here, which was called the C stick, which acted as a secondary stick to the circle pad, which is something that a lot of people complained about because, well, at the time, the PS Vita, which was essentially supposed to compete with the 3DS, had 2 sticks, and the 3DS only had 1 originally. And, of course, one of the big features, interchangeable faceplates. You could take the faceplates off this thing and change and swap them around to customize your 3DS to your liking. On the 3DS XL, it was pretty much the other one, but larger. The interchangeable faceplates were removed, and the buttons, while still referencing the SNES, were a bit more inconspicuous about it. The entire console, though, was pretty much the same, just a souped-up version of the other new Nintendo 3DS. The games that were released on these consoles were usually just the games you could play on the normal 3DS. However, there were also some exclusive games to the new Nintendo 3DS line. For example, Minecraft. Minecraft was exclusive to new consoles because, well, you needed 2 sticks to play it. They actually did release Minecraft on it. I've played it on the new Nintendo 3DS and it's not as bad as a lot of people say it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a really shitty experience. However, it's not nearly as bad as some people claim it to be. It's not amazing, but it's not the worst thing ever. And then eventually they released the new Nintendo 2DS XL, which is one of the most Nintendo names for a console ever, possibly. Yeah, so remember the 3DS? Alright, right. So then remember the new 3DS? Alright. What if we, took the 2DS and made it new, and we made it XL? What do you mean you want me to sign the divorce papers? The new Nintendo 2DS XL is the last console that was released for the 3DS line, and it was an interesting way to go out. I mean, I don't hate it, it looks alright. It definitely looks a little bit goofier than some of the other ones in the line, but it works perfectly fine. The screen looks decent, and the games it plays are the same as any other 3DS, it's just the 3D feature has been removed. It didn't have interchangeable faceplates, however, what it did have was a lot of interesting variants, a lot of which had 3D faceplates, which is something that none of the other 3DSs actually had. All 3DSs and 2DSs were also backwards compatible with the original DS, meaning that they could play any DS game at all that you just plug in and play. In fact, as I said earlier, it had a DS built into it, so it could play DS games natively. The 3DS family of systems had a lot of charm to them as well. The home menu had this music that would play when you opened into it, similar to the Wii or the Wii U, and you could change the themes of the 3DSs. 3DS is actually one of the main reasons that a lot of people want themes on the Switch too. It's because, well, they actually existed on the 3DS. 3DS's themes are nice little things you could buy from the eShop. There are even a lot of free ones that are just some little basic colors you could put on. It wasn't a lot, but it was a nice little feature that could help you customize your 3DS to make it feel more like your own. The 3DS also had, as I'd mentioned before, Virtual Console, meaning that it was able to emulate a lot of older Nintendo games from platforms like the SNES or the NES. The SNES games were exclusive to the new Nintendo 3DS line and were released quite a bit later into the 3DS's lifetime. However, they did exist and you could play them on there. Nintendo's reason for not adding them to the original 3DS was because apparently it wasn't powerful enough to play them. I know that's not true. Why? Because I've emulated SNES games on the original 3DS and it works perfectly fine. You could emulate SNES games on the original 3DS and there's literally no issues with it. They were just being lazy with this one. The end of the 3DS life cycle was a pretty interesting one. There was actually a small period of time where Switch games and 3DS games were both being announced in the same Nintendo Direct, because the 3DS actually lasted all the way up until 2020, where the new Nintendo 2DS was finally stopped production, and well, that was the 3DS line finally over. So, in conclusion, I like the 3DS. I mean, there's not much wrong with it. It had some pretty good games. The 3DS had itself, a lot of consoles, but it was good. There was nothing wrong with it. So, that's pretty much it. 3DS, I mean, it started off weak, but it ended strong. With Nintendo dropping the prices, that really helped with it. And, well, hoping they do the same thing with the Switch too, which They probably won't, but I can hope. So, final verdict? Yeah, I like new soup too. Yeah, so what?